There we go. So welcome and thank you everybody for joining us today for Sustainable Giving, Transforming One-Time Donors into Lifelong Supporters for Lasting Impact. My name is Emily Bauman. I'm the Communications Manager at the St. Louis Community Foundation. I just want to remind you that this presentation is being recorded. It's going to be available on our website as well as a PDF of the presentation. And you're welcome to drop questions in the chat. They'll be addressed kind of as we go along and then have some time for Q&A at the end. So it's my pleasure to introduce our two presenters today from Gladiator Consulting. We are pivoting a bit because Rachel is stuck in an airport, if I have that correct. So I'm very glad to welcome Demetria Lightfoot and Amie Bossi today. Demetria is currently serving as the Senior Director of Philanthropy at Youth in Need. With over a decade of experience in the social justice field, she has a strong passion for community-centric fundraising and equity in philanthropy. Demetria is committed to advancing social justice and racial equity in philanthropy. She is a dual alum of Fontbonne University in St. Louis and has been recognized as a rising professional by the Regional Business Council. In September of 2022, she was inducted into their Leadership 100 cohort. In addition, she also received the 2019 Women Who Inspire Award presented by Deluxe Magazine and was awarded a Leader in the Workplace Award by the YWCA. In her current role, Demetria empowers not just her immediate team, but others in her organization to achieve their dreams. She has helped cultivate and steward relationships for the betterment of the agency, among other things. She's truly a role model in her field. Welcome, Demetria, and thank you. Amie Bossi, let me see if I can get this right. MPPA CFRE, has worked in the nonprofit sector for over a decade and a half, working with numerous local, regional, and national organizations. She has spent most of her time working in small to mid-sized development departments, even building from scratch an entire development program for an organization that, although it was 140 years old, was brand new to the fundraising world. Ensuring organizations achieve their missions is Amie's passion. Having played many different roles within organizations, from program manager to development director, she understands the importance of building a spirit of philanthropy and maintaining it throughout development work. She currently serves on the board of the Immigrant Home English Learning Program, on the AFP St. Louis board, and is a member of the KTK Theater. She is a certified fundraising executive and an ambassador for the certification program. She loves hiking with her friends, tap dancing, cuddling her 5 cats, and performing in local community theater shows. Amie, welcome. Thank you both for preparing what I'm sure is going to be a wonderful training for us today. I'm going to let you take it from here.
Excellent. Thank you so much for those introductions. Before we start, I just want to welcome everyone for being here. Remind you, if you're not on mute, to mute yourself, but feel free to come off mute if you want to jump into the conversation. And if you're not comfortable, just share something on the chat, and we will pay attention to the chat as we move throughout this. I want it to be as involved as possible. I want everyone involved in the conversation, but we do want to respect your time and get you out of here by 2 o'clock. We have a lot of information to cover. So let's get started. So what stands out to you? Have you ever made a gift on Give STL Day or another Giving Tuesday, another specific day of giving for an organization? And if so, have you been thanked, cultivated, stewarded into another gift? And you can raise your hand, drop something in the chat. What stands out? A great way to be thanked, a great way to show appreciation. And if there's nothing, feel free to say that as well. Yes, I heard nothing from that organization after the fact until their year-end appeal. Okay, someone says a thank you phone call after the gift. Someone said they sent me a card where the kids drew a picture. Oh, I love that. Any other things stand out, good or bad, positive or negative? Did you give again? Why or not? When did you give again? And why or why not? Especially Emily, because they didn't hit you up again until the year-end appeal. Did you give to that year-end appeal? Nope. Yeah, not surprised. Why not, Emily? They just wanted your money. You felt like an ATM and they were just hitting the button. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's figure out how to not have that happen and how to make everyone feel like a human and not an ATM. Let's talk through that. I plan to give again because it helped me remember them. They also gave you a pair of socks. I want to know what this organization is. You can,
No, I
yeah.
want socks. Who gave you some socks?
Also, at Gladiator, we believe in work-life balance, and if you need to take care of self at any point during the conversation, please feel free to do so. You will see we're happy to have friends come onto the screen. You will see my cat Riot possibly make an appearance, and we're happy to see your furry kids, non-furry kids, and anyone else. Okay. So next slide. That's me. What is? Nope. This is Demetria. I'm gonna pass it over to you.
Thanks, Amy.
Sorry.
What is donor retention, right? Amy talked about some of the examples that you experienced. Well, you all talked about some of the examples that you experienced with other organizations that you felt compelled to give to for whatever that reason was, right? You were personally attracted to their mission, or maybe you had a personal impact from the organization yourself. And then as in turn, you said, I want to help them move forward. I'm going to give them a contribution. And they in turn did what they did or did not do to retain you as a long-term donor, right? So what is donor retention? Donor retention is keeping those individuals who were either one-time donors, first-time donors, episodic donors, and taking them and turning into potentially long-term donors, right? On a more regular and more frequent basis. And that regularity depends on what you want to do, right? If you want to just be an annual donor, that's fine. However, are we going to steward you to be that annual donor? Maybe you are someone who gives quarterly to or monthly to their recurring gifts campaign, but what is that organization going to do to retain you as a donor, right? So that is the donor retention piece. However, donor retention is the number one thing that many nonprofits let slide underneath the rug, because all the things that happen with our lives, right? We're not just the fundraisers or the marketing people or the social media person. We are that and then some. So many of the things that we do as fundraisers just kind of is our day-to-day churn. And those first-time people, those episodic people who have given to us, that we want to now turn and shift that relationship into a long-term person, a whole year has gone by. And now it's the end of the year. And I'm remembering that Emily gave me this gift and I want her to give it to me again. But I feel like crap if I say, hey, can you give me some more money? It's the end of the year, right? But I might do it anyways. Clearly they did. Without asking her anything in between, right? The retention is all the things in between, which we also like to use the fancy word stewardship. The retention is the stewardship of that person. So what are you going to do to retain that person as your donor? If we move on to the next slide, Amy, it's why does it matter? Why does donor retention matter? I mean, number one, donor retention matters because it's people who are going to give to you in a longer term capacity, right? So they are donors who are going to provide support to your mission. They are donors who are going to provide support to your programs. They are donors who are going to come and attend your events, whether it be your golf tournament, your gala, your trivia night, bingo, whatever you have going on, right? A community event that you may share, or even donate to you on your annual giving campaigns. They also might become people who become further involved in your organization. They might become volunteers at your events. They may become volunteers in your committees. They may become volunteers on your board. All of those things, the retention of what you do to an individual can elevate the relationship or deeper the engagement of that person to be able to give to you in either a larger capacity or continue to give to you in a longer capacity. So it matters because we not only want to keep those people to keep the mission alive. We had a previous CEO who used to say, no money, no mission, or we would say, no mission, no money, right? So we want those people to give money to support the mission, but we also want to cultivate those relationships because they become our friends. Like our donors become our people who really just live and breathe into us. And then the next thing you know, that person's been giving to you for a decade, 2 decades, maybe 3 decades. You might come across some of those people in your organizations where you see that they've been giving to you since, maybe I'm sorry, 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. So we definitely want to make sure that we're cultivating and stewarding those relationships appropriately, learning about our people and treating our donors like they are compassionate, right? And then taking that and bringing them into our fold and making that a more community-wide space. Also, engaging the passions of that person. Clearly, they gave to you for a reason. There was something that tugged at their heartstring that made them want to do more than just see the work that you're doing in the community. They felt compelled to be able to give to you, right? So you lived into their passion, and it is our responsibility to find out more about that, right? So maybe that person has accessibility to something else that you might be able to leverage later on down the line. They may be able to advocate for you in a space, but if you don't speak to them, you don't ask them questions, you don't find out more about them, how can you find out more about what that donor's passion is? They may give to more than just your organization. Find out more about that. It's not necessarily that we want to know all that they just want to know about us. We want to know about them. Trust and transparency, right? So we are continuing the communication. We can now share with them the things that we have going on, in addition to what they just provided funding for or a contribution towards. We might have a new program that we are looking to implement later, and we would like their advice. Or we think that because they gave to this specific program, they might also like this program that's coming up. So let's talk to them about that, right? So now you're bringing them even further into the fold. You're building that trust. You're creating a transparent relationship with your donor. So now they feel even further engaged. They feel more involved in your organization. And that's where the sustainability comes from and comes about. So it matters big time what we do and how we do it and how quickly we do it. We never want a year to go by before we are starting to think about retaining those donors.
Exactly. So according to Classy, studies show that acquiring new donors costs 5 to 10 times more than retaining our existing ones. So it's less expensive to retain donors. But one of those reasons might be that nearly 70% of donors don't give past their initial gift. Why is that? Why is that? It's probably because we're not building true relationships. We're accepting that transactional gift and not moving beyond it. When we move beyond into more transformational, deeper partnerships with folks, we're experiencing a higher lifetime value with our donors. What Demetria said happens over time. And we know that existing donors tend to give more over time than new donors. According to the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, if you're not familiar with that, it's a great thing put on by the Association of Fundraising Professionals that studies data and looks at best practices over time. And the average lifetime value of a donor is $215. But for retained donors over time, it's $270. And compare that to $135 for first-time acquired donors. It's anonymous. So this means that retaining existing donors can generate significantly more money over time. The average acquisition cost of a donor, so to attain a new donor, if you're not tracking this and you don't know this for your own organization, that's okay. The industry average is about $30.50. Virtuous does a study. They suggest that it can take 5 to 10 times more resources to acquire a new donor than to retain an existing one, implying that the retention cost could be anywhere from $3 to $6 per donor. So if acquiring is $30.50 and retaining is only $3 to $6 per donor, why aren't we focusing more attention on retention? So does anyone remember that ALS bucket challenge? Yes, right? Where you dumped ice water over your head.
Oh, I do.
Did you dump ice water on your head?
Me and my
Yes.
daughter.
Yeah. Did you know what you were doing it for?
You're asking me?
Mhm.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Are you still a donor for ALS?
No.
Okay. And let's see, Joel responded. Joel, are you still a donor for ALS? No. Why not? Demetria, why not?
I was gonna say I can chime in. I was gonna
Yeah.
let them say it. Yeah, the trend has passed. That's true, Joel. But also nobody ever called me and said anything or sent me a letter or an email, nothing. They definitely didn't send me any socks.
They did not send you socks. Joel, how about you? Same. No one called you. No one contacted you. The unfortunate thing with the ALS bucket challenge was they had no idea to predict the success that they would receive with that viral trend. And they had no internal organizational capacity to handle that, like literally no features in place, not even a database to handle that. So that's one reason why they didn't follow up with you. And secondly, no plan to say, what are we going to do with these donors to make them have a second gift? They didn't even know what they were going to do with the money in regarding to fulfilling our mission. So it was just kind of a good problem to have, but also yikes. They learned some really important lessons from that, and we can all learn lessons from that as well. The percentage of first-time donors who make a second gift to an organization is a little varied, but it ranges between 19 and 25%. Again, these numbers are low. We can do better, folks. We can do better. And by retaining just 5% more of our donors, we can boost our revenue by 25 to 50%. And these are numbers that come from that fundraising effectiveness project, Bloomerang, Donor Perfect, and AFP. A lot of studies across the board prove all of this or say the same information. So by focusing on retaining our existing donors, we can be more cost effective because recruiting new ones is more expensive, but it's laying the groundwork for building these true relationships, right? So if you have to prove to any of your higher ups or your teammates that you should put more money into your budget for spending and more time and more resources into donor retention, all of those things should explain. And I hope it's clicking in your brain as well. So how do we do that? Demetria is going to tell us how.
As soon as I unmute myself. Yes, so leveraging your donors, right? Starting with your data. Data is key and critical. Do you all have a donor database tool or system that you use to track your donor information and their giving records? You can put that in the chat. Someone uses, Aaron said they use Kindful. Anyone else? We use Donor Perfect, yes. We use Blackbaud, NXT, Razor's Edge NXT. Network for Good, yes. Salsa Labs, good. So good. Salesforce, you guys are keeping records of this information, which is great, right? Because you need to be able to pull this information out. Now, the other question is, how good are you at entering that data into your database? Because you cannot leverage your donors if you are not utilizing the system or the tool that you have to maintain and record your donors. You are only as good as the database that you maintain and keep. So literally every single thing about your donor and your interaction with them needs to go into your database.
Can I make a note about that, Demetria?
Sure.
There is a donor bill of rights. You can go to the AFP website to see that, but donors are allowed to see any information about them at any time. So I can, if I'm a donor to you, I can say, hey, let me see my donor record, and you are supposed to show me. So don't put anything in there that you would not want your donor to see. Just
That is
FYI.
true. That is very true.
Don't say Amie has a tendency to talk too much about her cats if you don't want me to see that.
Right. Unless Amie knows that's true, then then it's okay. Otherwise, it's disparaging. So you don't want to put anything disparaging in the record, but you do want to put enough information in there that will help you to leverage the next move with your donor, right? So being able to pull the data, once you put it in the system, now you can run the data that says, I want to know how many first-time donors I had between this period and this period. You can even filter that data out even further and say, I want to know how many donors I had between this period and this period that gave this dollar amount, or between these dollar amounts, a range. And then from there, you can disaggregate the data that you pull from the database and figure out what is your next move. Typically, your next move should come along with what your development goals are, which hopefully you have outlined in your development plan. And don't be scared by hearing development plan, because that doesn't mean it has to be some thoughtful strategic plan, multi-paged, outline bulleted, multi-step document. Your development plan can literally be like 2 or 3 goals and how you plan to achieve those goals and how you plan to measure if you achieve those goals or not. And very simple. The KISS principle is always number 1 at times, right? You don't have to have some elaborate thought out plan. So don't let that scare you. You can go ahead and disaggregate that data and use your goals to determine what's your next move with your donor. And using SMART goals is definitely always a metric that you should probably achieve, right? Like I said, you need to be able to find a way to measure how you achieved what your goal actually was and what your next step actually will be. So creating your development plan, creating development goals, disaggregating your data, and that will lead us into the next slide, which is segmenting your audience, right? So, and that is something that I also just spoke about, like donors that are giving between this range and this range, right? So I might be in my, whatever you consider in your donor shop, your development shop would be donors who gave under this amount are considered mid-level donors. Donors who gave over this amount are considered major donors. And that really depends on what is major for you and what is a mid-level donor for you as well. So you get to segment that information, categorize it, and then execute what your plan is going forward. Also, you can see themes and traits of your donor giving from the data that you are putting into your system.
I want to ask a quick question of the
Go ahead.
group. When talking about goals that are not monetary goals, does this group already measure some of those things? And if so, what are they? So let's do specific to Give STL Day. Do you perhaps measure new social media friends?
Mm-hmm.
New volunteers that sign up for a volunteer training? That's something that I help is always looking to do.
Aaron said first-time donors each month. So they're looking at who the first-time donors are each month. I know that when you do Give STL Day, they give you this wonderful spreadsheet at the end of all your donors' information, like if they provided it when they gave on the site with their name and address, email, like all their contact info. If they put that on there, it gives their amount that they gave, all of that, right? So, and I personally, we do participate in Give STL Day, but I would save that. And then I would go through and I would call those donors, or I would send a personal thank you to those donors. And I specifically categorize them in my database as their giving for that day was through Give STL Day. So when the next Give STL Day comes around, a few months prior to it, I pull that spreadsheet, or I go into my database and I pull my Give STL Day donors. And then I use that information to steward and cultivate those people, because I've already made a follow-up with them after they gave, even though the foundation does send them a stewardship letter. I personally also send another stewardship letter, right? Which is what we just talked about a second ago. I send them that information that's a part of the retention. And then maybe I might reach out to them again later on in an event that might have reached within the segment of the amount that they gave that I thought would be a good piece of information. Or if my Give STL Day campaign was specifically focused towards early learning or youth programs or dogs or whatever it was, right? Then I would say, hey, here's a little fun impact story for you, or give them a little something throughout the rest of the year. So when I reach out to them prior to Give STL Day again, it's not the last time that or the first time that they heard of me since they last gave, right? So, and I segment those people and I put them in that bucket, unfortunately, but then I find ways, how can I expand their giving beyond just that? So that is a great way to figure out what is your goal, how do you measure it, and if they gave again. Now I can look and see they gave last year, they gave year before that. They're probably going to give again this year. So it's safe to say that I took that one person and turned them into a recurring giver, even if it is in this one capacity. Amie will talk next about how we can engage those first-time donors even further.
Absolutely. And I think, yes, that's a great one. 100% staff and board participation. That's great. I want to recognize that every organization varies in budget size, in staff size. Some might be 100% volunteer run. So different measuring and goals are going to look different for each organization. And that's okay. For some organizations, a major gift might be $100. A major gift might be $100,000 for our friends at the zoo. That's great. Recognize that, and that it's okay to be who you are and where you are. But we cannot celebrate success until we know what success looks like. and we can't build upon success until we have a baseline. So that's why it's important to set those goals and then evaluate and then try to do better next time, right? So segmentation will look different for everybody. How will you engage your first-time supporters? How will we take the people who give us a gift for the very first time after Give STL Day and make them into a repeat donor? We have to recognize that these folks are just testing the waters. They are trying out the restaurant for the first time. We want to make a good impression. We want to make sure they come back, right? Everyone benefits from the intentional efforts that we have to show appreciation. We know that legally we have to send a tax receipt, anyone $250, anyone who makes a gift of $250 or over. We know that the Community Foundation has its own site that we go through to manage all of this process and to send the receipts. But how do we thank our donors and steward our donors past that? So we don't need to worry about sending the tax receipts, right, Emily? We just need to worry about taking that information, putting it into our database, and thanking our donors, cultivating our donors, and stewarding our donors. We need to communicate with the donor on the channel that they prefer. If they're donating to us through the Give STL Day website, they're telling us that they enjoy donating online, right? So when we communicate with them, we can send them an email. But if we don't know, we ask. I think folks often are afraid to reach out to their donors and say, what do you like? How do you want to be communicated through? And guess what? That's a simple phone call to say to someone, hey, Amy, I don't have your email address. All I have is this phone number. Do you mind giving it to me so I can keep you updated about who we are and what we do? Or, hey, the phone number I have for you is outdated. We're going to do a text campaign. Do you want to share it with me? Also, our board members like to call and thank people after campaigns. Can you give me your phone number? And then put those phone calls and those notes in your database. Don't just delete a phone number for the sake of deleting a phone number. Put the reason why. Put does not want phone contact and the date, you know? And then I do want to point out this interesting statistic. 13% of first-time donors never even receive a thank you. A thank you is very different from a tax receipt. Tax receipt is the legal documentation that you have to give that gives your tax no goods or services were exchanged in receipt of this donation, right? And here's our EIN number, and consult your tax professionals for more information. But a simple thank you, that's different. You can thank someone a myriad of different ways. Someone was saying earlier that they were thanked by a card with a child's drawing. I love that. And a pair of socks. I just think that's brilliant. We keep harping on the socks, but I love it. What was that percentage, Lizzie? Oh, that was 13%.
We're clearly deprived if we are like socks, all the things.
Yeah. 13% of donors, first-time donors, said they never received a thank you. So it's the simple things that we can do. Again, differentiating between the tax receipt and the thank you.
Your tax receipt is not your thank you.
Right. Tax receipt we're mandated to do by the government. The thank you we should be doing because we want to build authentic relationships with our donors. So beyond that, how are we going to engage in a meaningful way? There's so many ways to do this. And the answer is, again, ask your donor, but also just sometimes the donor doesn't know what they want. There was an amazing article, I believe it was the Chronicle for the Philanthropy. A donor said, this is why I stopped giving donations to organizations. And he was all huffy and said, they don't contact me enough and blah, blah, blah. And people went back and said, hey, it is not our job to be, communicating with you consistently, especially when you don't even respond. Like, and he emailed another opinion piece afterward and said, you know what, you're right. It is on me to let them know, like, yeah, I do want to hear from you this many times. And no, I don't want you to mail me a big newsletter that's this thick. I am cool with having it sent to me electronically. I will send the link as a follow-up piece, but ultimately it's have conversations with your donors. Sorry, it's not, oh, got it. Have conversations with your donors to see what they want. Don't make assumptions, right? And bottom line, treat people as human beings. Help. Absolutely, Ellis. You can send something that's both. You certainly can. But then what are you going to do beyond that? How are you going to keep them engaged beyond that? So what tactics do you all use?
We're like so in sync, Amie. I was about to say the same thing. I would like to know, because listen, we're all in this fight together, right? We all have the same woes. Like, how do we turn our first-time donors into long-time donors? How do we steward donors? How do we get so-and-so to call us back? And majority of the time we share donors, especially if we have very similar organizations. So I'd like to know what you guys are doing.
Brianna says, our donors have been responding well to text messages. On Valentine's Day, we sent a simple thank you with a cute picture of our students that said, Happy Valentine's Day. Those are the type of texts I would love to get.
Very nice. And never assume that because you might have donors of a certain age range that they are not savvy on all the platforms, because you'd be surprised, like if you have an older donor who is still very tech savvy, or uses social media, right? And follows you in that capacity, as opposed to where in the past we always assume that older donors really like to get everything in the mail, right?
Yep.
So we can never ages someone in that technology space. So don't be afraid to use all your tools in your toolbox.
With iHelp, we had our development committee and key staff all band together, and we did social media shout outs to every single donor. This was a few years ago when we didn't have that many donors, but it was, an Instagram post. Thank you, so and so and so and so and so and so. Every time, every 15 minutes or so, we did posts on social media. And then we also do split it up between board members and do a phone call to every single person who donates to our to our Give STL Day campaign. Is there
somebody's taking my... I do the video sometimes. I saw Lisa put in there that they do a quick video and email a thank you.
I love that. Nice. A quick video.
Mm-hmm.
There are some
touch.
Yeah, like Donor Perfect, you have to buy that to piece to have it automated in your database. But if you break it up amongst your development committee or board or staff, you can easily just, hey, Demetria, thanks for your gift, send it off. Is there an easy platform or app for sending mass texts? Yes. GiveButter is a free donation platform. It includes a CRM. You can do peer-to-peer fundraising. You can send texts and emails. It will replace MailChimp. I'm on the board for a really small community theater organization, and we use it, and it's fantastic. I'll put it in. Sorry, I'm going to switch it over to the next slide. Or Demetria.
So my picture box is in my way, nearly every $100 gained in giving faces $96 walking out the door due to attrition. That's crazy. That means you're only keeping $4. What are you doing with $4? You're not that $96 is probably the money that's going to go to your programs, right? And the $4 is what goes to your overhead if you have like the capacity like less than 5%. goes towards overhead and operations, and the rest goes to programs and support. So you're letting all your programmatic dollars just walk right out the door. So how are you impacting your people, right? And sometimes you can save $96 by just sending a quick thank you. Postcards are amazing because the postage is cheaper. If you have noticed, the cost of a stamp is very expensive these days. However, postcard stamp is still pricey, but it's cheaper than a regular stamp. And it's just a quick note, 2-3 lines, and sometimes that's all you need. Donors don't always want to. They like getting mail, like non-bill mail in the mail, but they also don't want to get like a novella all the time in the mail. Think of it from your standpoint. You're a donor to certain places, are you? And if so, what do you want to get in the mail? So think of it like that. Like if I were to get this from my organization that I gave money to, and they just sent me a quick handwritten, hey, we saw that you gave, we really appreciate your support. It goes to help X, Y, and Z. And, someone's name signed on the bottom, and that's it. It's like, okay, that's cool. It's a quick little touch. It came in the mail, it was fun mail. Everybody loves fun mail. Or whether it be a text message with that Valentine's Day message that someone put in the chat, all of those things, right? So what are we doing to keep those dollars coming in? How are we nurturing relationships? And nurturing relationships is just a really nice way of saying, what are we doing to cultivate and stewardship our people and steward our people, right? What's the next step in our donor life cycle? And that is more than just figuring out how are we going to ask them for the money, because sometimes the easiest part of asking them for the money is just learning who they are, figuring out them as a person. You know that they just got married, or their kids got married, or their kids went away to college, or their kid is about to graduate high school and maybe go to the service, or whatever the case may be, right? But you have to get to the point where you are building the relationship to learn those small details about your donors in order to be able to nurture your relationships. And if you let it walk out the door, then how are you going to get to the point where you can learn that information? You might know that they just recently experienced a death in their family, right? So sending them a quick bereavement card in the mail that says, I'm sorry for your loss, our condolences, with your organizational name on it. And that's stands out volumes, not just for you as the fundraiser, but your organization as a whole, because now they're like, okay, they see me, they see the things that are happening in my life, right? So you're celebrating in their wins, you're there for their lows. Your donors are your friends. Sometimes they're challenging friends, and you got to learn how to mitigate those challenging friends, right? But that's just having that conversation that says, hey, let's talk about it. And when you do talk about those challenging issues that we all have with donors, because we do have to sometimes have crucial conversations with our donors, right? Now the follow-up is just to let you know from what we talked about before, here's an impact story on what this looks like or what we just talked about. And that brings them even further into your relationship. So I would be interested in knowing, do you all like track donor birthdays? Do you know if your donors have like kids? Do you know what their kids' names are? Do you know their ages? Do you know if they recently got divorced? All of those things, because that also plays a part, right? Was it a we organization and now the we have split? So who was with who? Does the husband go with you? Does the wife go with you? Maybe they both stay your donors. Who knows, right? But it's learning how to navigate people's lives. And once you can actually really grasp them as a human and a person, then you can build on those relationships that way. Setting Google reminders for birthdays is so easy. If you don't, we don't track donor birthdays at my organization, But if I happen to know it's their birthday, then I will put something in my calendar that says it's so-and-so's birthday on this day. So I can send a card out in advance, not the day of, right? So I put the date of the birthday in like a week before, so I have time to get the information out to them in the mail. And if I miss enough time in the mail, an electronic birthday card is just as amazing, right? So all of those things. And oh, I love this strength-based approach to telling all of your storytelling, right? So always using a positive lens when you are sharing the information of your organization. Now, all of us don't always work for Happy Sunshine organizations. I work for Youth in Need, and we don't always have happy stories, right? But how do I share those challenging stories and create hope and positivity on the other side, right? So sometimes the hope and positivity is not the story, but the hope and positivity is the donor giving of their time, talent, or treasure to the organization to help us impact those kids who need it the most, right? So being able to tell the donor how they are living into the organization as a whole. And that is nurturing those relationships that makes them feel like they're seen, they are heard, they are special individuals, and not just someone who is financially contributing to the mission of your organization. Are there any other, yes, we're not tokenizing our clients with their sob stories. We don't ever want to do that. However, we do want to be real. So I do appreciate you putting that out there, Amie. And then I also say a helpful part of nurturing relationships with your donors, because like I said, sometimes we share donors. We may not know that we're sharing donors, but we might find out. And if you have friends in the industry, make another development friend and find out what they're doing to nurture the relationships of their organizations. And I don't want to say stealing information, but we're just sharing tried and true methods with one another, right? So part of your success, it comes off of the back of the success of others as well. So find a development buddy who you can run your information by and share your thoughts and say, am I crazy if I do this? Have you heard of this? What do you think about? And see what they do, see what they say. And that's also very, very helpful tool. I made some of my best friends as other fundraisers, and they have helped me not just grow in my profession, but have also made some very long-standing positive relationships as well. So I will say nurturing relationships is not just donor-centered, but nurturing you as a relationship, because check on your fundraiser friends.
Absolutely. Self-care. You're only as good to others as you are if you're good to yourself.
Yes.
Thank you for that. And that really just brings home the point that if we want to be in relationship with others, we need to treat others the way we want to be treated, and think about our own personal relationships. When we build authentic relationships with others, what do we do? How do we like to be treated? And do the same with them. And just gather the tools and the resources that help you do it on a broader scale. When we think about the organizations that have fundraisers, development officers that have a portfolio of maybe 30 donors, that's great for them. They have those resources to be able to do that. But if I'm one of those in that portfolio, I get a birthday card. I get flowers delivered, once a month just because, or, they knock on my door and say, hey, I was in the neighborhood. We can't do that with every donor, but how do we do it in a systemized way and build these relationships that are authentic with more people than just beyond a thank you note, right? So that's what we're looking to do. And it starts with a plan. It starts with saying, we're going to do this with these segments of donors, with the people that give to us on Give STL. This is how we're going to start building relationship, because relationships look different with each person, right? I'm not going to be in a relationship with you the same way I am with my husband or my, best friend from high school. Set up messaging funnels. Your message, again, always have strength-based messages, not sob stories. And you can tell someone's story without having without playing up the victim card, right? And for organizations like Demetria's or others where people need to stay incognito, you can make composite stories. You can do things to get around, like featuring, we're going to put so-and-so on display. And then if you do use a client story, always run it by that client first and make sure that they have approval over their own story. We're not going to take advantage of folks. And set up those message funnels. So if I sign up, or if I, when you enter all of your Give STL Day donors into your database, what happens next? Someone said they put them on their email list. Great. And I know we're going to do it according to the canned spam laws. You know, we all have the opt out. We all do that. I'm going to assume that we all do that. But what are you going to say? What are you going to say with that first email? What are your ultimate goals? So let's say we want to welcome them to the fold, right? We want to say, hey, you gave to us on Give STL Day. Welcome to Organization X. You are part of our partnership. You're part of our family. And then set up this sequence of emails, nurture emails, we called it. And maybe the ultimate gift or the ultimate goal is to get them to join your monthly giving program, to get them to become a volunteer. Whatever your goals are, set them on that email funnel, that nurture sequence with that goal. Most email services like MailChimp and Constant Contact allow you to do that. If not, you'll just have to take your segmentation and do it yourself. It takes time and energy, but you will reap the rewards in landing more monthly donors, landing more volunteers. Don't do the one size fits all. You don't do that with your friends. You don't do that with your closest partners, right? You can't do it with your donors either. And it's all about the message. You have to think about what you want to say and how you want to say it. Again, you can't say the same thing to me, who's been giving to your Give STL Day campaign for the past 5 years, that you're going to say to someone who is giving for the first time. And then we need to evaluate, what did we do this year that worked? What didn't we do? We had all the board members make phone calls, but you know, I love how someone put in the chat and they said, I love making a phone call and someone picks up and they're cranky, but then I said, I'm just calling to say thank you. And they have a whole different attitude and you have a fantastic conversation. It's amazing. Do you have an event to thank your donors? Do you have a big open house at your organization where everyone can mix and mingle, the people you serve, your volunteers, your staff, to celebrate Give STL Day? You have a day of volunteering, so it moves beyond just raising money. Get input from everyone. So, wrapping it all up, we're all going to start with a plan, right? And then we're going to design our messaging. What do we want to say and to whom? And then we're going to craft that messaging around strengths-based storytelling. We're going to automate it as much as possible. Someone just asked, is there a free email marketing tool that easily allows you to import Outlook distribution list info? So all email lists can be downloaded into a CSV file, which is essentially a spreadsheet. And I think MailChimp is free up to a certain number of users. I don't know if Constant Contact is. GiveButter allows you to email within their system for free and do mass emails. You're going to bring in your team. You can't do this alone. Ooh, amazing. You're having a dedicated email marketing training on March 19th. Woohoo!
Perfect timing, Emily.
Bring in your team. This is development. I like to say there's no I in development. Or I like to say there's no I in fundraising, but there absolutely is. So I say there's no I in development. It's a team effort. Who needs to be on your team that isn't? Who can you bring in? Plan it together. Nurture your relationships treat people the way you want to be treated. This will give you longer, stronger relationships in the end and build your donor retention, donor lifetime value, your DLV. And that's something that if you have a robust database, there's probably something in there that you can hit a button and it shows you your DLV of your donors. So it's really cool to kind of see that over time and kind of pull that out to prove to your leadership, like, I'm improving this. It's a good metric to share. And then evaluate what works, what didn't. So what's something that you plan to do in the next 30 days? If you want to come off mute and share, or just share it in the chat, or 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days. It's also okay to say this was too overwhelming and you can't do any of this because we just give you bad information or you don't see change happening within the
Jaleesa said she's going to create some thank you videos in preparation for Give STL Day. Collecting the right data to be able to personalize thank you messages. That's great. I will say, Jaleesa, I used the camera on my computer. I just saved it as a video and then I just attach it to an email and that's literally it. So you can find easy ways to do it. You don't always have to need a platform or a database or something to do things. Lisa said, find STL gives matching donors. Set up a plan for new donors that come from STL gives. That's a good idea. 100%. Yes, 100% participation from your board. I'm here for that. I'm going to start a series on my donors. All right, Tiffany. It looks like you guys picked up some nuggets. I think it's safe to say.
Great. And these tactics can be used not just after Give STL Day, but after your event, after your year-end appeal. So they gave to your year-end appeal. Great. What's next?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I think Amie might have froze.
Oh, no. Am I back?
Amie, I see you, but now I don't see Demetria. So maybe she's the one who froze.
Oh, maybe. Okay.
There always has
Okay.
to be something Zoom
Demetria
related.
froze. All right, cool. Well, so yes, so this tactic is applicable to it should be part of your entire development plan, not just for Give STL. We are so appreciative of you all being here today. There's lots more that can be talked through, and I hope you gained some valuable information. And we have lots of follow-up to send out. Anything you want to add, Emily?
Just definitely wanted to say thank you. I was to you and Demetria. Looks like she dropped off technical difficulties. This was great. I know I learned a ton. Also had some reminders of some best practices that I know we should be doing, but we're not always great about doing. So just wanted to extend my appreciation to you and the Gladiator team, and then also everybody who was here today, listening and being active in the chat. Definitely a great way to spend an hour. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Have a good one.